And now we again start our lecture number 13 from a complex number. On page number for exercise, page number 47, about a complex number. First of all, we define here a complex number. Definition of a complex number is the numbers which can be written in a plus iota b form, where a b belongs to real number and iota is equal to square root minus 1 is or are called complex numbers. It is denoted by small z, that is z is equal to a plus iota b, where real part of z is equal to a and imaginary part of z is equal to b. The number which can be written in a plus iota b form, is called a complex number, where the condition of a and b are a and b are real numbers and iota is equal to square root minus 1. We are denoted complex number by z, whereas complex number is written as a plus iota b. Its RE, that is real part of a complex number, which is a, which doesn't contain the iota. Imaginary part of z, which is b, which contains iota. Now the second one is conjugate of a complex number. What is the conjugate of a complex number? Second one, conjugate of a complex number. What is conjugate of complex number? If we have a complex number, suppose z is equal to a plus iota b, be a complex number, be a any complex number. Z is equal to a plus iota b, be a any complex number. Then z bar, which is equal to a plus iota b bar, that is a minus iota b. After taking conjugate of a complex number, we change the sign of iota. Z bar means a minus iota b is called conjugate of a complex number z. Now next thing is power of iota. Next thing is power of iota. What is power of iota? First of all, as we know that iota is equal to square root minus 1. Then the next thing is, if we taking the square on both sides, that is iota square root minus 1 square. If we take the iota square root, after cancellation with square, it becomes only negative 1. Then we have iota square is equal to negative 1. What is the value of iota? The value of iota is square root negative 1. What is the value of iota square? The value of iota square is negative 1. Now similarly, we increase the power of iota. Here we take iota cube. How can we write iota cube as iota cube? We can write it as iota square into iota. Dot means here multiplication. What is the value of iota square? The value of iota square is -1, and iota, if we multiply -1 with iota, it becomes negative iota. That is, iota cube becomes negative iota. Therefore, the value of iota cube is negative iota. Similarly, if we increase the power of iota, that is iota 4, we can write iota 4 as iota square into iota square. What is iota square? Iota square is -1. Again, iota square is -1. If we multiply -1 with -1, it becomes +1. Now we have iota 4 is equal to +1. What is value of iota 4? Iota 4 is equal to +1. Similarly, if we increase the power of iota, we suppose iota 5. Iota 5, we can write it as iota 4 into iota. What is the value of iota 4? Iota 4 is equal to 1 iota. If we multiply 1 with iota, it becomes only iota. That is, iota 5 is equal to iota. Similarly, we go on increasing the power of iota. We get the different values of iota 5, iota 6, and iota 7 up to so on. Now we come across the exercise on page number 49. Exercise 2.5. In exercise 2.5, we simplify or evaluate the first part. The first part is the first question: evaluate different values of iota. The first part is iota 7. Here we evaluate iota 7. Solution: we can write iota 7 as iota 7 can be written as iota 7, first of all, iota 6 into iota, because we split 7 into 6 and iotas. Iota raised to power 6 and iota raised to power 1. It becomes iota raised to power 7. How? As a raised to power 7, we can write it as a raised to power 6, a raised to power 1. If the bases are same, then we add the powers. If we add the power, 6 plus 1 becomes 7. Similarly, in iota form, we can write iota 7 as iota 6 and iota 1. We can rewrite iota 6 as iota square raised to power 3, because 2 3 times becomes 6 into iota. And as we know the value of iota square, what is the value of iota square? The value of iota square is -1. Now we replace the value of iota square here. It becomes -1 cube into iota. If we take -1 cube, which means that we multiply -1 3 times. If we multiply -1 3 times, the answer is -1. Or simply we can say that if there is a negative number and power is odd, then negative sign contain. If the negative number contain the even power, then positive sign. Here we have -1 into iota. After multiplication, it becomes negative iota, which is our required evaluation of iota 7. Similarly, we solve the next part. The next part is part number 2, iota raised to power 50. Now here we solve the iota raised to power 50. It's simple. We can write iota raised to power 50 as we know that 50 is equal to 2 multiplied by 25. Therefore, we directly write as iota square into 25. What is the value of iota square? -1, because iota is equal to square root -1. Therefore, iota square is equal to -1, and its power is 25. Again, the power is odd. Therefore, we have -1, which is our required answer. Now, similarly, here we solve the next part. The next part is iota raised to power 8. Fourth part. Fourth part is negative iota raised to power 8. First of all, we have negative sign inside the bracket and power is even. Negative sign inside the bracket and power is even. As we know that if the power is even, then negative sign changes into a positive sign. Therefore, we can write it as iota 8. Now, we can write iota 8 as iota square raised to power 4. What is iota square? Iota square is negative 1 raised to power 4. Again, the power is even, therefore, negative 1 becomes positive 1, which is our required answer. Is there any question? Please raise your hand. Okay, now we move our next question. The next question is, write the conjugate of the following. Question number 2, write the conjugate of the following. Ahmed Iqbal. Ahmed, what's your question?
सर वो पिछला वाला पार्ट जो था अभी माइनस जरा दिखा दें
Minus 1 raised to power 8. Ahmed, here you see that the power is even. If we have an even power, therefore, if we apply the even power on negative 1, negative sign, it becomes positive. It becomes positive because if we take the even power on negative sign becomes positive because 8 times we multiply negative 1. Now, iota 8 can be written as iota square raised to power 4. What is iota square, which is negative 1? Negative 1 raised to power 4 means positive 1, which is our required answer. Abdullah Hadkiani.
सर अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर बात सुने
जी
सर
जी
सर ये देखें आयोटा पावर 50 है सर फर्ज करें ये पावर होती 51 सर फिर हम क्या करते
पावर अगर आपके पास मैं इधर साइड पे सॉल्व कर रहा हूं इफ द पावर इज 61 दैट इज 51 और 61 51 if the power is 51 first of all we split it into 50 and iota. Okay, now we split into iota square raised to power 25 into iota. What is iota square? Iota square is negative 1 raised to power 25 into iota. Now power is odd, therefore it negative 1 multiplied by iota becomes negative iota. Clear? If the power is odd, first of all split it into even,
यस सर
then
ठीक
solve it. Okay, now we move on the next
ठीक
question. The next question is question number 2. Question number 2, write the conjugate of the following numbers. Here we write only conjugate of the following numbers. The first number is 2 plus 3 iota. The second one is 3 minus 5 iota. The third one is minus iota. The fourth one is negative 3 plus 4 iota, and fifth one is negative 4 negative iota, and last one is iota negative 3. Here we write only conjugate of the number. As we know by the definition of conjugate of the number, we only change the sign of iota. Here we change the sign of iota, then its conjugate becomes 2 minus 3 iota, because the value of iota contain positive sign. Here value of iota contain positive sign. We change this positive sign into a negative sign, we get the conjugate of a complex number. Similarly, we write all the conjugates of the numbers 3 plus 5 iota. Here we see that value of iota contain negative sign. Now we change it into a positive sign. Here only we have a value of iota which is pure complex number. We change the sign of iota. Here the sign of iota is negative. We change it into a positive. Similarly, in next negative 3 negative 4 iota and goes minus 4 plus iota, at last negative iota negative 3, because here iota is positive we change the value of iota and get the conjugate of a complex number. Clear? Now the next question is question number 3. In question number 3, write the real and imaginary part of the following. Here we write the real and imaginary part of the number or a complex number. The first number is 1 plus iota. First of all, what is the real part and what is the imaginary part? As we know that the complex number is written in the form of a plus b iota or a plus iota b. Here a is its real number. Here a is its real number. Real part is equal to a and imaginary part is equal to b, which means that the number which contain iota is imaginary part, that is b. Here it contain iota, and the number which does not have the value of iota, it's a real part. Clear? Now in a question here we see that this part doesn't contain iota, therefore we write it as real part of z. We write it as real part of z is equal to 1. Who can tell me about the imaginary part? What is the imaginary part here? What is the imaginary part? Okay, imaginary part is, yes, Abdul Ahad. What is the imaginary part? Abdul Ahad? Okay, here imaginary part is 1. Why? Because we can write 1 plus iota as 1 plus 1 into iota, because 1 multiplied by iota become iota. Here the part which doesn't contain iota is 1. The part which doesn't contain iota is 1. Therefore real part is 1, and beside to iota it's also 1. That is, if there is single iota, it means that its imaginary part is 1. So therefore imaginary part of this number is 1. Now we move on to the second part. The second part is negative 1 plus 2 iota. Now here we write real and imaginary part. What is its real part? Its real part of z is negative 1. Real part of z is negative 1. And what is the imaginary part? Imaginary part of z is 2. Imaginary part of z is 2, because the value of iota contain coefficient of iota is 2. Therefore imaginary part is 2 and real part is 1. Similarly, if here we see the fifth part, solve fifth part. Fifth part is negative 3 iota. Negative 3 iota. What is real part? Here real part is real part of z. This is a complex number. Real part of z is 0, because there is no real part. Therefore we write here 0. And what is the imaginary part in part number 5? Imaginary part is the value of the coefficient of iota is negative 3. The coefficient of iota is negative 3. Therefore imaginary part of z is negative 3. Now we move on the next question. The next question is question number 4. Remaining part do yourself. Clear? Remaining part do yourself. Question number 4. In question number 4, find the values of x and y. Find the value of x and y. If given that x plus iota y positive 1 with is equal to 4 minus 3 iota. Here we are to evaluate the values of x and y. We are to find the values of x and y. And the given statement is x plus y positive 1 is equal to 4 negative 3 iota. Now here we see that if we take this positive 1 on the right side, it becomes negative 1 and negative 3 iota. If we subtract 1 from 4, we get 3, negative 3 iota. Now equate real and imaginary part. Here we equate the real values and the imaginary values with each other. Here we equate real and imaginary part. What is the real part? Real part is x. We equate it with the real part on the right hand side. Therefore, the value of x we have x is equal to 3. Similarly, we equate the imaginary part. Here the imaginary part is y. We equate it with imaginary part of the right hand side. What is the imaginary part of the right hand side? Which is minus 3. Therefore, y is equal to negative 3, which is our required answer. Here we are to evaluate the value of x and y, or find the values of x and y. Therefore, we have x is equal to 3 and y is equal to negative 3, which is our required answer. Okay, now we move on the properties of a complex number. In properties of a complex number, if we add two complex number, then again the answer is a complex number, as same as the property of a real number. Similarly, go on. Yes, what's the question? Okay, page number 52. On page number 52, Ali Hassan, Ali Hussain Tasawwur, Ali Hussain Tasawwur. Why are you
सर ये
raising
बस
your
एक
hand?
दफा लास्ट पार्ट दिखा दें सर, एक दफा.
Okay, last part, question number 4. Yes, what's the problem? Okay, here I revise part number 4. Here the given is x plus iota y plus 1 is equal to 4 minus 3 iota. We rewrite again the question. Now we shift this positive 1 on the right hand side and it becomes negative 1. After solving 4 and negative 1, we get positive 3. Now we have a two complex number which are equal to each other. Now we equate means we can equal the values, real values and imaginary value. Equate real and imaginary part. What is the real part in the left hand side? The real part is x, and what is the real part in the right hand side? Real part is 3. Therefore x becomes 3. Similarly, we equate here imaginary part in the left hand side is y, and imaginary part in the right hand side is negative 3. Therefore we have the value of x and y. Now we move on the next exercise, which is 2.6. In exercise 2.6, first question do yourself, because it's objective, and we studied in detail the objective about a complex number. Therefore, identify the statement. Question number 1. In question number 1, identify the statement. In question number 1, identify the following statements as true or false. First of all, you simplify the question, you get the answer. If the answer is same as that of the given answer, then it becomes true. Otherwise, it becomes false. For example, we solve here the first part. The first part is square root negative 3 into square root negative 3 is equal to 3. Either it's true or false. Here we solve the left hand side. Square root negative 3, square root negative 3. We can write it as square root negative 3 square. After cancellation, the square root with square, we get negative 3. But here we see in the right hand side, there only write positive 3. The answer is negative 3, but here uh, we see that here we have only positive 3. Therefore, this statement is false. You write here false. Similarly, every part do yourself. Now we move across the question number 2. Question number 2 is, question number 2, express each complex number and its conjugate. Express each complex number in standard form. Standard form. What is the standard form of complex number? A plus B iota, where the condition is where A and B are real numbers. The first part is question number 2, part number 1. 2 plus 3 iota plus 7 minus 2 iota. Here we see that there are two complex numbers. The first complex number is 2 plus 3 iota, this, and the second one complex number is 7 minus 2 iota. We simplify it into a standard form of a complex number. What is standard form? A plus B iota. Now we solve it. For the standard form, we first of all see the sign of addition in between the two complex numbers, which means that we add these complex number. Now how we add these complex number? We add real part with the real part, that is we add 2 with 7 and add positive 3 with negative 2 iota. That is we add real part with the real part and imaginary part with the imaginary part. Here how we add? We have 2 plus 3 iota added to 7 minus 2 iota. After we add real part with real part, 2 plus 7 and imaginary part with imaginary part, 2 plus 7 becomes 9, 3 iota plus minus 2 iota becomes positive 1 iota, positive 1 iota, or we can write it as positive 1 iota. It moreover becomes 9 plus iota, which is our required answer. Which is our required answer in the form standard form A plus iota B. Now we move on the next question. The next question or the next part is we solve here part number 2. Part number 2 is 2 into 5 plus 4 iota negative 3 into 7 plus 4 iota. Here we simplify it into a standard form or simplest form. We have 2 into 5 plus 4 iota negative 3 into 7 plus 4 iota. First of all, we multiply this 2 with 5 plus 4 iota. When we multiply 2 with 5, 2 multiplied by 5 plus 2 multiplied by 4 iota. Similarly, when we multiply negative 3 multiplied by 7, positive and negative become negative 3 multiplied by 4 iota. After more simplification, we get 10 plus 4 2 times 8 and iota. Negative 21, negative 12 iota. Now take the real part on one side and imaginary part on the other side. 12 iota. After simplification, 21 is the larger number, it contains negative sign, therefore we have a negative sign. After subtracting these two numbers, we get 11. Similarly, 12 is the larger number, it contains negative sign, we have a negative sign. After subtracting, we get 4 iota, which is our required standard form of a complex number. Now we come across the fourth part, which is very important exam point of view. Question number 2, part number 4. What is part number 4? 2 iota square plus 6 iota cube plus 13 iota raised to power 60, 3 iota raised to power 16, 6 iota raised to power 19, and last 4 iota raised to power 25. Here we solve and write it into a simplest form or a standard form of a complex number. First of all, we write here again question 2 iota square plus 6 iota cube plus 3 iota raised to power 16, 6 iota raised to power 19, 4 iota raised to power 25. As we know that iota square is equal to negative 1, we replace the values here. 2, here we write iota square. 6, iota cube can be written as iota square into iota. Similarly, 3, iota 16 can be written as iota square raised to power 8 because 8 2 times becomes 16. Similarly, 6, iota 19, we can write it as iota square raised to power 9 into iota because 2 multiplied by 9, it becomes 18, and this 1 power add to this, it becomes total 19. Similarly, at last 4 iota square raised to power 12 into iota, which becomes 25 because iota square and 12 is 24 and 1 iota, it becomes 25. Now we simplify it. Here we simplify it. We write instead of iota negative 1 instead of iota. What is the value of iota square? Negative 1. Where we see the iota square, we write negative 1 instead of iota square. Similarly, here also we write negative 1 instead of iota square. Now after more simplification, negative 1 multiplied by 2 becomes negative 2. Negative 1 multiplied by 6 becomes negative 6 and it contains iota. If we see here, we have negative 1 raised to power 8. Power is even, therefore negative 1 becomes positive 1. Negative 1 becomes positive 1. Therefore, negative 1 raised to power 8 becomes positive 1. Similarly, here we see that we have negative 1 raised to power 9. Negative 1 raised to power 9. Power is odd, therefore we write here negative 1. At last, we see that it's positive 1 iota. Yes? Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali. Okay. After more simplification, we get negative 2, negative 6 iota, positive 3, Negative and negative become positive, it becomes positive 6 iota and 4 iota. Here we see that two terms are cancelled with each other, that is negative 6 iota and positive 6 iota. Now after more simplification we get the required answer, that is negative 2 and positive 3 becomes positive 1 and at last 4 iota, which is the standard form of a complex number, which is our required answer. Okay, now we move on the next question, question number 3. Question number 3 is question number 3. In question number 3, simplify and write your answer in the form a plus b iota, that is in standard form. The first part is negative 7 plus 3 iota, negative 3 plus 2 iota. Here we see that there is no sign in between the brackets. There is no sign in between the brackets, which means that we multiply these two numbers. How we multiply these two numbers? First of all, we rewrite the question here, which is negative 7, negative 3 plus 2 iota. We multiply its term by time or either by normal multiplication, that is negative 7 is multiplied negative 3 plus 2 iota, which means this negative 7 is multiplied with whole bracket. Similarly, positive 3 iota multiplied with whole bracket negative 3 plus 2 iota. Now we multiply these numbers. After multiplication we get negative and negative becomes positive. 7 multiplied by 3 becomes 21. Similarly, negative and positive becomes negative. 7 multiplied by 2 becomes 14 and it contains iota, therefore 14 iota. Similarly, positive and negative becomes negative. 3 multiplied by 3 is 9 iota, and at last positive and positive becomes positive. 3 multiplied by 2 6, and there are two iotas. One iota is here, another is here. Iota and iota becomes iota square. Iota and iota becomes iota square. Now after more simplification it becomes positive 20, negative 14 iota, negative 9 iota plus 6. What is the value of iota square? The value of iota square is negative 1. After more simplification it becomes 21, negative 6, negative 14 iota, negative 9 iota. We rearrange real values with each other. Okay, at last we have positive 21 and negative 6. It becomes 15, and negative 14 and negative 9. It becomes negative 23 and contain iota, which is our required standard form of a complex number in a plus or a minus iota b form. Okay, now the time of the lecture is over. We have only 1 minute. Inshallah, we start our next lecture of tomorrow from page number 52, question number 3. Is there any problem? Then raise your hand, because we have left only 2 minutes.
सर इससे पहले 3 पीछे वाले सवाल दिखा दें सर,
पिछले
मतलब
3
इससे
क्वेश्चन. Question number 2, part number 2. these questions we simply added or subtracted with each other. There is no any more difficulty in these questions because we
सर
add or
इससे
subtract.
पीछे वाला सर एक
The first part, this,
जी सर यही वाला
here we only add these two numbers. And
और
how
सर
we
पार्ट
added a
नंबर
complex
6 जो
number
है
with each
क्वेश्चन
other?
1 का पार्ट 6 क्वेश्चन 1 का
Question number one, last part. This part, question number one का 6 part. अब आपको बता दें, we have the 6 part in a question number one. Okay, here we solve the 6 part of a question number one. The 6th part is, we have, after the solution we write here a negative 1 with negative b plus 3 iota is equal to 5 plus 8 iota. After simplification, we see here, if we take the real part with the real part, we have a minus 1 is equal to 5. After more simplification, a is equal to 6 because negative 1, when move on the right hand side, it becomes positive 1, positive 5, and positive 1 becomes positive 6. Similarly, negative b plus 3 is equal to positive 8. Real part equate with the real part. We have negative b, negative 3 is equal to 8. After simplification, negative 3, 8, positive 3, because 3 is a negative in left hand side. When it we move on the right hand side, it becomes positive. Negative b is equal to 11. If we change the sign, it becomes b is equal to negative 11. What are the answers of A and B? The answers of A and B are A is equal to 6 and B is equal to negative 11. But in the book, you see the answer is same as A is equal to 6 and B is equal to negative 11. Therefore, this statement is true. Therefore, this statement is true. Okay, the time of the lecture is over. Inshallah, we see these questions on the next lecture. Allah Hafiz.